Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video we're going to look at Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So they decided to split up book 7. And this is the first film of the two that they do in order to clean up the massive mess they've made in the last 6 films. So this is my copy. I linked that in my intro to this entire series. So check that out. As for the books, I don't link them because I don't support buying them new. Find them used, go to your local library. That's it thoroughly explained in my intro, but Rowling has issues. The only reason I'm covering these books and these films because they're not going away. Harry Potter is still a decent book series. The films are interesting. They're not bad family films for what they are. They're horrible adaptations, but I will get into that. The other thing that I link in there is another book called Harry the History, which is the reason I'm okay with you doing these. Rowling sold the rights, so she doesn't have rights to the films. She had no control over the films whatsoever. She does, however, have control over the Fantastic Beasts, which is one of the many reasons I won't cover them. She has to have script writing credits, because according to this book, which is according to, I believe, an interview the author did with Rowling years ago, she and her deal with Warner Brothers, they can't take her world and run with it. So they essentially, unless it's based on something she's already written, they can't recreate new stories. So she has to be a scriptwriter on those. So that is the reason I'm okay with you doing this and not messing with the giant mess she's making, because she's not that good an author, at least when it comes to script writing, let alone creating films. Though they probably should have consulted her a little bit more when creating these messes, because they make a bloody mess, because they cut so much out. So now on to this mess. So this film starts obviously at the beginning of book 7 and ends after they escape the Malfoy Manor with Dobby's death, and then Voldemort magically stealing the Elder Wand, which is essentially Dumbledore's wand. It's buried in his tomb, which is something else they cut out of book 6. I forgot to mention when I did that review. Yeah, they cut out the entire funeral of Dumbledore's. So, but onto this thing. So that's the chunk that this covers. So some of the stuff, obviously, they throw in a bunch of stuff because, they cut too much out in the last couple of films. So they have to play a lot of catch up. You kind of had to do a little bit of catch up in the last film with Bill Weasley, though they cut out in the last film where he gets scratched by Greyback. I believe that's the pronunciation. He's the werewolf who bit Lupin, which you know about. It's his backstory that you don't know about in the films. But he was human when he attacked Bill Weasley when they had a battle right after Dumbledore's death in the last film, which for some reason I forgot to thoroughly mention in my sixth film review. But essentially there's a giant battle that happens. Harry is, and I'll cover that just because it's directly related to a lot of this film. Dumbledore is dead. He was killed by Severus Snape, but he was disarmed by Draco Malfoy, and yeah, that's important. And in the films, Harry's just following orders. He doesn't listen. Dumbledore tells him to stay downstairs, and he does it. In the book, it makes more sense. Dumbledore stuns him and throws the invisibility cloak over top of him, so he can't move. So essentially, and yes, you kind of realize later that Dumbledore commits assisted suicide. He's dying, so he has Severus kill him. But that's kind of the end of that. But onto this film. So they have to do a lot of catch up. I don't really get an explanation. You don't really get an explanation of why suddenly Bill Weasley has a giant scar on his face. They don't talk about how essentially the result is no, he doesn't turn into a werewolf. He does apparently like red meat. And no, Fleur Delacour, despite what both Jenny and Molly Weasley want, is not going to leave him. They don't like her. You kind of get that a little bit in the first book. I don't think it's shown off in the film all that much. But yeah, they hate her. She drives them crazy. And they don't know why Bill is marrying her. And she irritates them because she's not vain like they think she is. She's like, I don't care. I love him. I don't care if he's scarred and he needs more raw meat. I'm still going to marry him, which is part of how this this is where the film starts. The book starts again at the Dursleys, where the Dursleys are going into hiding with the Order of the Phoenix because they know everything's going to go crazy. This is about a month after Dumbledore's death. So, and both Petunia and Vernon are still pissed off. Dudley realizes shit's gonna get real. Sorry, my language here. And that Harry saved his life a couple of years ago when it came to the Dementors. So he's actually they leave on good terms, oddly enough. So the start of the films, he's a big fat bully. He now realizes, I'm going to grow up now. So you don't get that. Harry basically starts at the wedding. And you get a little bit of information. You get the reading of Dumbledore's will, which is kind of important. He leaves Harry his first snitch, and there's something in it they know that said it starts where it begins. He leaves the putter-outer you see in the first film to Ron, and then a book of fairy tales to Hermione. He also tries to leave Harry Gryffindor's sword. In the film, they don't want him to have it. In the books, it's missing. And yeah, that sword it's very important in all of this. So, and that's kind of how this film starts, and then they have, essentially it's revealed at the end of the reception that I think they get a Patronus. I don't know I can't remember how they use it in the film. It might be the same, where essentially, I'm trying to remember who it is. One of the Aurors sends his Patronus, which makes no sense. It probably, I think in the film it's in the book it's something else. Essentially, Dumbledore's taken over the Ministry. So, and then Harry, Ron, and Hermione leave to start basically the journey of trying to find the Horcruxes. And they get to Grimmauld Place, which Harry inherited, I believe Kreacher's gone back there. And they find Kreacher, and through Kreacher they find out that they had realized the locket was a fake at the end of the last book and the last film. That the locket that Harry went with Dumbledore to get in the Dark Cave wasn't real. It had a note in it from R.A.B. And they figure out when they're in Grimmauld Place that R.A.B. was Regulus Black, Sirius's brother. And Kreacher had the original locket. And they kind of find out the backstory about what happened and how Regulus turned against Voldemort, because Voldemort used Kreacher to drink the horrible potion that Dumbledore drinks at the end of the last book and film, and then leaves him to die. Luckily, Kreacher escapes and comes back, tells Regulus, and then Regulus takes Kreacher back, and he himself drinks it and steals the original Horcrux and replaces it with the replacement, and then dies. Essentially, he sacrifices himself and sends Kreacher away. So, however, the locket has been stolen by another character they barely bring into this, which is, whose name I cannot remember. Essentially, he's the thief. You find him in the very beginning of book 5. He's supposed to be watching Harry, and he keeps stealing things from Grimmauld Place. That's what he does. He's crooked, but he also knows the dark side, which is the reason they use him. So they find out that he sold it to Umbridge. So they need that Horcrux. They have to sneak into using Polyjuice Potion, which they do show in the film, to the Ministry of Magic, where Umbridge is quite happy in being a judge and has all sorts of power because she's evil. And they steal it back from her. I think they stun her and they escape. And I know in the film they do again, with all these films, they like to make things bigger because the audience. So they have a whole giant rushing out of their thing, which is far more dramatic than I think it is in the books. So then, of course, they've been found out of where they were hiding. So now they're on the run, and that locket is demon. Basically, anyone who wears it basically starts going crazy and mad, which eventually what happens to Ron, and he leaves them. He gets in a huge fight because I think he thinks Harry's hitting on Hermione, and he just gets really, really pissed off at the world. He becomes very, very cranky, and he goes home for a while. and he rejoins them later. Also, during this part of the book, they find out, I believe, I don't know if Ron is with them, I think, at this point. I know they get a hold of the Sword of Gryffindor because they find it. It suddenly appears, and Ron, they use it to destroy a Horcrux. They also find, and they do that okay, but again, they cut out Ron's heroics quite a bit. And they kind of have to shovel some stuff in because they forgot to build him up as a character. So you have to want to be upset when he leaves. So they do okay. The rest of the stuff that they cover in here is you find the back on this film. You find out the backstory of the Hollows. Now, Rowling took this story from British literature, I believe. And even when I saw the film, I'm like, why do I know this story? So this is the story that she gives. She has three wizard brothers, and they're trying to cross a river that's a raging river, and they use magic to cross it, and Death is pissed off because Death is watching this river and stealing people and basically stealing their souls because that's what Death does. So he makes a deal with his three brothers. And it's like, I'll give you 3 wishes. And of course it's Death, so he's tricking them. One of them asks for a wand, and this is particularly, that makes him unkillable, I believe. Not undefeatable, and that's important. And I think that's in the original tale as well. That's the older brother. The second brother asks for something that will basically bring someone back to life. And then the third brother asks to essentially defeat Death. So you get a wand, a stone, or basically a ring, and the invisibility cloak. Now this is Harry's invisibility cloak. He's related to, I believe it's the Parzival brothers, was their last name. So he's related to them. Oddly enough, so was Voldemort. He was distantly related to one of the brothers as well. That's where the locket comes from. So locket is related to those family heirlooms. So I believe that's where the locket comes from. It could be I think where the ring came from. So Harry actually becomes obsessed with these things because this is actually what Dumbledore was obsessed with. He wanted that ring to bring his sister back to life, which is something they find out when Ron and Hermione are alone and they go to Godric's Hollow, which is where Harry's parents died and where Dumbledore grew up. And it's where Harry's parents' house was and where their graves are and Dumbledore's home is. And they kind of find out the backstory and a little bit about that. They also, I believe it's in this film, they find out that Rita Skeeter has written a massive tell-all book about Dumbledore. So they find out a little bit about his backstory, his sister, his younger brother, who apparently got in trouble for doing something you shouldn't be doing with a goat. I don't remember that quite thoroughly. But they find out all this backstory. And Azinforth actually is important because he sends Dobby to them when they're locked up in the manor. So what happens to them is they find out about the Percival brothers from Lovegood's father. And then they also find out that Luna's missing. And that she's been kidnapped by the Malfoys and the Dark Lord, and they have her because they want information from him. And they think Harry's going to come to them. So the other thing is Voldemort wants that wand. He doesn't know what it is. He just wants Dumbledore's wand because he knows that it would make him indefeatable. Again, it's something he doesn't know the whole story. So, and of course he believes he can cheat Death. So, and of course the trick, particularly with the ring, is the wife that comes back that the original brother brings back is basically a ghost of herself. She's a reanimated corpse, I think, in the original story. And he commits suicide. And the original brother, which Voldemort doesn't realize, and Harry doesn't seem to pay attention to, is he eventually dies because the wand makes you unkillable, not undefeatable. There is a difference. And the wand also picks its owner, like they all do. And it picks the only person who defeated, not killed. Again, very, very important wording here. The last owner. So, of course, that's in the next film. But so that's all that. That's kind of what they put into this, and eventually they need to get that sword because they know it destroys Horcrux. I can't remember where they figured that out. So they end up realizing that Bellatrix Lestrange has put it in her vault. They go into Gringotts and cheat, try to get in there, get it, but the goblins realize that the thing in the vault is a fake. But they actually find, I think the real one is delivered to them because it's a magical sword, and I believe it's delivered to them. I think Ron has it, and when he comes back, and they're able to use it to destroy the locket. And then eventually, however, because Harry's been upset, and they cut this out, Harry just randomly shouts out Voldemort, I think, in the film, which is how they're captured. And they do a whole chase scene, which no is in the film only. It's not in the book. So, and then they get captured by the Malfoys. They're tortured. Hermione is tortured because of that sword, and there's no backstory to it. So, again, I'm rambling a little bit. Check out Dom Nozel's channel. He makes a heck of a lot more sense than I do when it comes to this. But, and essentially they escape. They escape because Wormtail owes Harry his life, and Dobby comes to help them because Harry is staring into a cracked piece of mirror. Yeah, they don't explain that either, because they cut out the whole in book 3. They cut out a lot of stuff. So I believe it's this. Yeah, this is from 5. They cut out the mirror, the two-way mirror that Sirius gives him. So Harry's, however, periodically staring at a piece of shard of mirror in his sock throughout this film without anybody explaining it. Because they never set it up. And Harry broke the mirror because he thought he could contact Sirius. So he still, however, for some reason kept the pieces because it was linked to his godfather. So that's how they get Dobby. And he's just kind of periodically staring into that mirror, and I think he thinks he sees Dumbledore and he begs for help. And Advent, what he's actually seeing is Dumbledore's brother. And Dumbledore's brother sends Dobby to them to help get them out of the dungeon. And then Wormtail, who has if you remember book 4, his hand was cut off. And he has a silver hand, magical hand created by Voldemort. Problem is, the moment Harry reminds him that he once saved his life, the moment his brain thinks about betraying Voldemort, the hand on that supposedly is not actually controlled by Wormtail strangles him. So he's killed by his own hand, and they're able to escape. But Lestrange sends a throwing knife into Dobby. So Dobby dies. That's how this film ends. It ends with Dobby dying, and then the whole backstory of and Voldemort finding and cracking open Dumbledore's grave and finding that wand. Because they do bring in Grindelwald just a little bit. But again, they don't bring in his full backstory. And I think one of the things that my YouTuber, Dom, mentioned is they use an English actor for a Eastern European wizard. So, but that's pretty much the end of this. The film kind of strong arms some stuff with explanations, sometimes with not, because, they forgot a bunch of stuff. That's the theme of this film. And the next two is they all of a sudden have to do catch up. But that is it for this review. I will finish off film 8, which will be done with my Harry Potter books and the films. Check out the rest of them. I've done everything, all of the books, all the films up to this one. I will do one more and then I will be done. Also check out my intro video, which again, I rant and rave about Rowling, and you can find links to the film set that I have. Otherwise you can just Google them on Amazon, along with the link to the Harry A History, which I actually found in my library and was reading it because nobody was checking it out. That was before I left my old job back in a while ago. But that is my toddler crying, so I'm going to be done with this. Thank you.